Hi, friends. Welcome to the Hot Book Sluts. It's your three favorite book sluts. I'm Thomas.
And I am Christy, and it's
Jeremy.
Slurp time number 69.
It's
Yes,
slurp time.
this particular
Slurp
episode
time.
is
Yeah.
number Slurt Time 69,
Yeah.
if anyone's been paying attention. We are currently reading The Gunslinger by Stephen King. We just started our path to the Dark Tower. They finished it. I'm on page like 130.
You're so close. Yeah.
Loving it.
Okay. Where shall we start?
Where are we? Are we confused? I guess I'll start since I'm the farthest behind.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
So I just finished the flashback that Roland has of his younger years training to be a gunslinger in his home of Gilead. Gilead.
Gilead, yeah.
Um, and it's interesting because in the last episode we were talking about how at the beginning you don't have much to relate to the gunslinger to. Like you don't necessarily
Right.
like latch on to his character entirely. Like he's definitely cool. He's very
Yeah.
interesting, but there's also like the space between like the reader and what they can relate to and what the gunslinger is, which is like this other entity. But as soon as you go through that flashback, I just instantly had such a deeper love of his character. The way they
Yeah.
portray him as
Hmm.
simple-minded, but because of that, I think his dad says
Yeah.
that he's formidable, and the way he kind of gets insight into the things he sees, but translates it in really simple ways because he's not necessarily the deepest of thinkers, but he still catches things. I think is just
Yeah, he's
really
not
beautiful.
slow. But it's interesting that they sort of keep referring to that, how he's just not very imaginative.
Hmm.
It is interesting. Yeah. I did like that flashback because it very much was you do get to know him. You see him as a kid, um, in training to be a gunslinger, and um, is that does that include when he fights Court to like be a gunslinger? I can't remember.
No, I think that's a little bit later, or
Oh,
it's
okay,
coming
okay.
up, and I just haven't quite gotten
You
there
just
yet.
haven't gotten there yet. Okay, well,
Yeah,
but yeah.
but I love when their first scene where they're training with the hawk, and you could see his friend Cuthbert like hate Court that's training them, like as he's like reprimanding him like
Yeah, yeah.
very harshly for not having the fastest reaction time and then for sticking his tongue out at his
Hmm.
back. And when he looks at Cuthbert and says like, oh good, there's a spark in you, like that's a good thing, like when you think
Yeah,
you're ready, come at me, boy. And
yeah.
it's interesting because there's all a bunch of moments in that flashback where I'm like, oh, that's really dark. And it's seen as a good thing for a gunslinger. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Like they see that spark of darkness as potential for what they're
Like
becoming. Like,
you're
what is a
prepared,
gunslinger?
yeah, or
Yeah.
you've got it. You've got what it takes
Yeah.
to be one. Yeah.
And I like
Right.
that the
Right.
fantasy portion isn't some like straight up utopian society where like, oh, everybody's equal and things are easy. Like, no, like these gunslingers are raised cruelly and taught
Yeah.
harshly to
And
become what they're going to become.
like it go through abuse, like physical
Oh,
abuse
straight up
and
abuse. Yeah.
and verbal abuse, and yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It's a sounds like a harsh childhood. That's for sure.
One thing that stood out to me is Stephen King is so well known for character building, like creating these elaborate backstories for his characters to the point where they feel like you already know the person or you already met the person. And what I felt like with both Roland and the Man in Black, I feel like there wasn't a lot of character building for either character. Like you can't really relate to either one. They didn't remind me of like any person that I knew. So it
Right.
almost felt like they're more like symbols. Like Roland is like this symbol for good, whereas the Man in
Right.
Black is just like this very definitive symbol for evil. And that's kind of like the impression that I was getting.
Yeah, I feel like, especially for the Man in Black, you don't really learn that much about him at all.
Yeah.
He's got this, well, he's got this master. Sorry, I guess it comes a little bit later, but you don't know anything about him.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've mentioned him once so far, that
So
there's
far for
like
you
a
that
dark man with red
he's
eyes, like behind him. If I remember correctly, I might have written it down.
okay.
Just that
Okay.
there's like an entity that he serves.
Right. Exactly. But there's there's no backstory really on the Dark Man at all,
Yeah.
or the Man in Black, and he is much more vague to me in this than he is in The Stand.
Yeah.
And the only reason I feel like I know him better is because I've read The Stand already. If I hadn't, I just like, ooh, this Man in Black is very mysterious, and I don't know anything about him. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like The Stand gives you a lot more to latch onto as far as that character goes. But you're right,
Right.
like that whole symbol for like the good and evil. And it's more like order and chaos, I think, like so far that we've seen, or like the
Mm-hmm.
experience that I've gotten from it. It's less about like what is good and like godly, and like based in human qualities that we attribute to like goodness and kindness and compassion, because that's not what the gunslinger is. He is law
Mhm.
and order
Oh, yeah. He's
Mm.
and
ruthless.
righteous fury, ruthlessness.
Yeah.
And the Man in Black is like doing flips over a dude and spitting on him, and like that's like messing up the order of the
Performing
world and
weird
bringing him back
miracles.
from the
Yeah.
dead. Yeah, like doing
Right,
weird
right.
things with fire, being where he's not supposed to be, moving faster than he should. Like it's very chaotic.
Yeah. And you almost don't really get, so besides how Roland describes him, you don't really get this sense that he is this really bad person or entity or character.
Yeah.
Not like in The Stand. I
Right.
have that feeling about him because I already know the character,
Mm-hmm.
but in almost every way he seems just totally vague, which, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that's by design because this is a series and this is only the first book in it, so you're going to learn more about him. But I think if you're like, this is the only thing that you've read of the Man in Black, and you come across this, you're like, I'm not really sure if Roland's sort of quest to the tower or to destroy the Man in Black is it the right thing? He was born into this and like has committed himself to destroying him, but I don't know. You don't really have a ton of evidence that he actually is bad, at least not in this book, I feel like.
Yeah, because he's chasing him, but he's
Yeah.
not necessarily chasing him to kill him. He just wants information from him. So
Well, that's true. Yeah, because he's trying
Yeah.
to get to the tower. Yeah.
Which is also super vague. We have no idea what the tower is or why he's going there. Like
That's also pretty vague too. But he does have it almost feels like he does have some sort of, vendetta against the Man in Black as well. Like he does want to kill him at
yeah,
some
he
point or
mentions
eventually.
personal things such as like something
Yeah.
happened with him that caused, I think I read recently, like Roland to kill his mother, if I remember correctly. I feel like he says that like at one
I think
point
you're right.
while reminiscing like early on with Jake in the desert.
Yeah, I think you are correct. I think he does. Does he say he mentions he killed his mother? I can't remember. But that sounds right. Like he was forced to do it by the Man in Black, basically.
Yeah,
right.
Through some weird situation
Right.
of circumstance and deeds. And
Right.
this all kind of leads into what a question that I wanted to ask you guys is like, what role do you think the gunslingers had in that society? Like, what were they? Because they're not necessarily knights in shining armor. Like they're feared to a certain degree. But like, one does come for the execution of oh gosh, I forgot the name. I have it in my notes. That cook that uncovered that conspiracy.
the like chef or whatever, because he was conspiring.
Hacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Hacks, Hax.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've been trying to sort of, so clearly the gunslingers have been around for a long time, and I guess I haven't quite figured out. I guess their whole purpose is to find the tower, I'm assuming. But it also seems like they are some sort of almost like police of sorts. Not
That's kind
quite
of the feeling I got, like lawman.
Yeah, a little bit like
judge,
not
jury, executioner almost.
Right. So yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I also I would liken them to like kind of like knights in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like the Knights Templar looking for the Holy Grail is what it felt like to me. Because
that's a good comparison.
Yeah, I believe in the Middle Ages they had that group, the Knights Templar, which I think they were formed to find the Holy Grail, and then as they grew in power and gained more gold from conquest, I think they also did start to kind of act like the police or watch over, I want to say, pilgrims that are like walking along paths to like a pilgrimage. So that's kind of what I would liken it to.
Yeah. No, I would. I think that's a really good comparison. I like the Knights Templar searching for crap. What did you just say?
Oh, the Holy Grail.
Thank you, Holy Grail. Because it's almost like the tower is the Holy Grail.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the impression that I got, like the feeling that I got. And if you look at the Robert Browning poem, what's so fascinating to me, and I'll grab the link and post in the chat so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But so obviously this is in part based off this poem, because it says child Roland to the dark tower came, and there's even a knight called Cuthbert in this poem.
Oh,
So
wow, cool.
yeah,
Interesting.
obviously it's drawing a ton from this poem.
Yeah.
Let me paste this in so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. One of the things about this poem is it was written in 1852. So, I mean, this is going back a really, really long time. So it's fascinating to me, not only that Stephen King decided to base The Dark Tower off this really old poem, but if you scroll down to near the bottom of the Wikipedia entry, so it wasn't just Stephen King that drew inspiration from this poem. I mean, there's so many people and so many series that reference this poem. So you've got Doctor Who, C.S. Lewis, Neil Gaiman.
Oh, and the title is also a line from King Lear too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The amount of works that reference this one poem that's from the 1850s. I mean, it's just incredible, like how many people go back to this poem. And the imagery is kind of almost like a dream in the poem, and I kind of feel that way as well about the Gunslinger, where it's kind of like this dreamy kind of weird reality that they're living in where time doesn't behave like it would in our reality.
Yeah. That's interesting. There's a lot of, I mean, there's so many influences
Mhm.
that it lists.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my
extensive
gosh.
list.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. There's even Sandman in here. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep. And another thing that was someone pointed out online is another part of the inspiration for this was the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which
Yeah.
was not your traditional Western. It was considered a spaghetti Western because it was made over in, I want to say, Italy.
Okay.
I believe.
Is that why they
Well,
is that why they
is
call them
that?
spaghetti westerns? 'Cause they're made in
Yeah,
Italy?
I wanted to zoom in on that for a second.
I don't want to say incorrectly.
No, I actually have always wondered why spaghetti west like why a movie is called spaghetti western. Like where is spaghetti western? Where does that come from?
My bad, my bad. Okay, sorry. So The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was largely shot in Spain. So I'm sorry, not Italy, Spain.
Okay.
Paella Western.
Paella.
Yeah.
A tapas western.
But isn't that why they were called spaghetti westerns, because they were filmed
In a not
overseas?
not the US
Or
basically. I honestly actually have no idea. I've never never
Consult the
known
internet.
where that name comes from.
okay.
I just figured it was like a specific style of western, which I mean I guess it is, but not quite how I was thinking about it.
Oh yeah, okay. Why are westerns called spaghetti? The term spaghetti western was coined by Spanish journalist Alfonso Sanchez
Spanish.
to describe the low-budget films being made in Italy during the 1960s and early 1970s. Italian directors, writers, and producers filmed spaghetti westerns throughout Europe, shooting in countries like Italy and Spain.
Okay.
And I think they also touch on that in the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because Brad
Oh
Pitt
yeah.
and
Yeah.
DiCaprio, don't they talk about that near like
You know what? I think they probably do, and for
yeah.
some reason my dumb brain didn't pick up on it. But yeah, he goes over to I think it's Italy actually to shoot a few westerns.
Yeah.
And they're like, I think they're really popular. They end up being really popular.
Yeah.
Movies over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why. And he brings his Italian wife or fiance back with him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And I read online that for a lot of the spaghetti westerns, they almost have like a weird dreamlike quality to them because it's supposed to be taking place in the United States, in America during a certain time
Right, but
period.
it's
But in
not.
reality, they're being filmed in a totally different place and often directed by, like Italian directors or
Right.
and they would also dub so they would have Italian actors. So the Italian actors are saying the lines in Italian, but then they
Right.
would dub over it with English, which then created like an even more like weird dreamlike quality to
Right, because it
the
doesn't always
spaghetti
match up.
westerns.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, because
I love
the
this. I
dub
love this all
wouldn't
so
match
much.
up exactly.
But is it I'll be honest, I've never seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which feels weird for me to say because it's not my parents' favorite movie, but like one of their favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
Especially I grew up with that soundtrack being played in the house all the time,
Yeah,
which if you've never
yeah.
listened to it, go listen to it because it's freaking amazing. But I've never actually seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But isn't Clint Eastwood in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there other are all the other actors Italian actor or Spanish actors?
Maybe not all of them, but I
Maybe not
know
all
they
of them. Did
used,
they
yeah.
did they dub on that one? I mean, I guess they did if it's a spaghetti western. Or maybe it's not.
Maybe parts. parts
Okay.
of it, like some of the actors. So maybe
Yeah.
so he would have been speaking English, so they probably wouldn't have dubbed
Well,
over.
that's true. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because I remember reading a blog about that and how this inspired the Gunslinger, and how people that would watch the movie, they said, you know, you're watching a Western, but everything feels like it's a little off, like you're in a dream.
Right. It's
Um,
not quite right. Yeah, like you're in a dream and there's things that are not quite
mhm.
right, but your brain is like, yeah, that's fine.
Right, right.
But then you wake up and you're like, yeah. Yeah, that
Here.
is, I mean, that is how Gunslinger feels, because you're like you're reading and you're thinking, okay, there's definitely some similarities between our world and this world. This world seems much older, but
Mhm.
it doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah, even the memory of Gilead, like Gilead had those qualities too. So like even in like their city, like where things
Yeah.
were together, um, there was still that dreamlike quality where it's like this isn't quite right. Like there's something else going on here, or this is like the vestiges of what civilization had become.
Right. And the further that I read, so I think last week we said something like it feels like maybe 200 years have passed, probably.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I think it's maybe more like thousands of years. That's what it,
Oh,
by the time
interesting.
I like when as I got further, it felt more and more like many, many, many more hundreds of years had passed
Mhm.
into the thousands
Mhm.
almost. Um,
Oh.
so I don't know.
I could see that just because of some of the technology that they have. Um,
Yeah,
Especially that pump that basically works indefinitely off like atomic power.
right.
That
We don't have
that
anything like that right
seems
now.
Yeah.
really, really advanced.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
because
don't
that
think
implies
we're.
an
Right.
advancement in technology and then losing it, which like
Yeah.
that makes you think
Yeah,
about a larger timeline.
right.
Also, Roland's dad, his name is Stephen.
Stephen. Yeah.
I liked that.
Another thing that I found interesting is just reading through the plot for this poem. I guess poems have plots.
Is that what you
Um,
posted?
yeah, I just posted part of the plot for the Robert Browning poem, and it kind of follows the first book. So Roland is disturbed by the apocalyptic landscape, which obviously we have.
Mhm.
There's a dreadful battle. Eventually, the plain gives way to mountains, and
Yeah.
Roland finds himself stuck, unable to find a clear path forward. So it's almost like he kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, followed the kind of the beats for this poem a bit.
Ooh, it even has he reaches a river which he fords with trepidation, half convinced he's stepping on dead bodies floating under the water,
Hmm.
which makes me think of, well, so there's the slow mutants, right?
Hmm.
Which they're
Hmm.
sort of like, half living, half dead people, basically. Or this
Yeah.
was that's how they described it. There was also, oh, I gotta find it, because this was awesome. There was also this moment, I think it was not long after Roland and Jake reached the river.
Hmm.
Um, and he tells Jake not to touch the water, I think, because
Oh.
there may be like lingering dead in it or something like that.
Huh.
And it very
Interesting.
much made me think of Lord of the Rings. Um,
Of the
Oh.
Dead Marches, yeah.
the Dead Marshes, which is like on the other side of the mountains from Mount Doom. And yeah, that was sort of what I was envisioning, even though those are marshes and this is a river, like a flowing river. But that was I was just sort of envisioning these like ghostly, dead people and I don't know what else. Just under the surface, and if you touched the water, they would like pull you in. And it was actually really cool. I was like, ooh.
I wonder if Tolkien was inspired by this poem, and then King was inspired by Lord of the Rings, and the poem as well.
Maybe so. Yeah, I think a little bit of both. King probably is maybe inspired by both. I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly, he was inspired. Clearly, he's definitely inspired by the poem.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which also mentions dead bodies floating under the water. So.
Also, speaking of inspiring, one of the first things Jake says when you see him is, "I don't like people; they fuck me up." I think about that all the time.
I laughed out loud at that part because I was like,
they fuck me up.
Such a great line.
They always like, pulverize his penis.
Like, yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, damn people. Also, I noticed on page 103 in my copy, the gunslinger's thinking back, and he calls Allie, the woman that he was
the like the barmaid or whatever.
He refers to her as Alice.
He does. I noticed
and that. I was like, is that like leaning more into this world, losing its cohesiveness, that like it's directly affecting the gunslinger and his memory? Because Jake talks about how like his old world's fading and he's worried about not remembering his name tomorrow. And I was like, oh, is there this like insipid like senility that like whatever's happening to this world to like cause it to be so loosey-goosey that's like directly affecting him and he's not even noticing it? And I don't know if that was on purpose or just a typo, but it's hard to believe that it's a typo considering that I have, the slightly like altered like second version,
right.
No, I don't think it's typo because I'm pretty sure somewhere later on he also says he sort of sees her again in whether it's like a dream or a vision or whatever, I can't quite remember. But he says Alice, but then 2 sentences later he says Allie.
Yeah, that has to be on purpose. Like there's no way that would have survived a re-edition.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think, I definitely think it's on purpose. And I noticed that too. And I was thinking, Alice, who's Alice? And then like 2 sentences later or something, or just slightly further down the page, he says Allie again. And I'm thinking, oh, right, okay, duh, Allie. And then I kept thinking back and I was thinking, did he call her Al, or did she say her name was Alice at one point and he just called her Allie for short, even though that's not shorter than Alice?
I don't think so.
Weird.
So I didn't think so either. But I'm pretty sure there is later on somewhere in the book where he says Alice and then he says Allie again, but not long after that, like right after he thinks about Alice. So I don't think it's a typo either.
He's losing his mind.
It was right after that. He mentions that the city that he came from, and I think this is when he's still talking to Jake, was a walled city. And I really liked that it was this really quick thing that really lets you get this insight onto his homeland, that the main feature of the city that he talks about when telling other people about it is that it's walled. That's its main focus. And I thought that was really interesting because the implications of that is that like, walls protect, but they also keep in. It seems like that's like the pride of the city, that's what allows it to survive and to be and to keep its like cohesiveness, is that it has walls. And I thought that was a cool little, just a little drop in the interest water that he put.
Yeah.
So, Christy, Jake comes from a different world. So what
Yeah.
world do you think Jake comes from? Like, where do you think he comes from?
I had well, when was this written, or when was it first published?
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, when was this?
I mean, my version is going to be like
1982 was the first
82.
copyright.
Okay, so my thought was our world, like where we live, right? But I'm reading this in my present day, but he's right, King is writing it in his present day, which was 82, and it felt like
Right.
the 80s to me. Like 80s New York City. So that would check out. So to me, it is that present day Earth as we know it, United States, New York City that we know, not even some alternate reality New York City.
Right.
So
Right.
that was my thinking. He dies, his genitals are pulverized and other things. And then he's sent to this other world. He doesn't there I mean, is there a heaven and a hell in this sort of timeline or universe or what? I don't know, but he's sent to another world. It doesn't but it almost seems like his body goes, not necessarily his soul, but maybe it is his soul. So then I was thinking, I don't know, can he die again? Because he's already died. Can he die again in the traditional sense? Was he sent to some sort of purgatory?
Yeah.
I don't know. But he's definitely, to me, he's definitely from our world.
From our world. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the impression that I got as well. Like, he's from our world, and the Gunslinger's world is definitely, possibly our world, but maybe like a splintered version
I
that
think it's a
separated off
Yeah.
at some
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
a splintered version, but at this point, I'm not convinced that it's necessarily splintered off from the Man in Black winning at the end of the stand, basically, because there's this advanced technology clearly that, like the water pump you were talking about, but they didn't have that in the 90s. Well, when the newer version of the stand takes place, but the original version of the stand takes place in the 70s. That technology was definitely not around then. So, I mean, unless they created it, the Man in Black won and they created it. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's possible, but I still feel like it is some splintered version of our world, because they keep describing old, what sounds like highways, because there are signs and lights on the sides, and then just other Hey Jude, obviously. Other random things. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but yeah, there's other little hints here and there that this is definitely our world, but just a different version of some sort.
Yeah.
I also like, on that whole, like, what world is it? When they introduced the chef Hax, they talked about, like, very quickly his race or his coloring. I can't remember which one it was. But I think they mentioned that, like, he's from the South, and I found that really interesting that was included to kind of make the world seem bigger, that there's other places.
Right, because it does seem very
factions.
small. It does seem very small.
Yeah.
At first, at least the world.
I also am wondering if this is like Stephen King's kind of like showing you a card before he plays the whole hand kind of deal thing that he does. And there's been a couple instances that I've noticed him doing that. Hax saying, "Don't get me into trouble," like before the kids go, and you
Mhm.
know, eat their pie under the stairs and then like hear about the conspiracy and then turn them in.
Right.
And it's interesting because that's like not the players, the characters experiencing that as opposed to us, the reader, which is how he usually does it. He tells the reader a little something
Right.
and then you wait for it to happen. Uh,
Right.
but I wonder if he's foreshadowing something that's going to happen with Jake that's going to like push him into like adulthood or into becoming a man or losing his innocence. Because the whole story that we get of him before Hax's execution is basically the moment where even in this hard world, like he really loses innocence, like him and Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Like they watch this man die. And
Right.
Roland, like in a simple, like child way, really beautifully sees that it's happening. And like he knows
Right.
that he should watch this man die because he knows it's going to like prepare him for the hardships of life that he is training for and for the gunslinger that he knows he's destined to be. And I wonder
Right.
if that's a parallel to what we're going to experience with Jake, because this flashback happens right after you hear about Jake's death. And Jake coming back to this new weird warped reality the gunslinger is in kind of saves him from experiencing that. And you know, the gunslinger asks like, hey, do you want to remember this? And he's like, yeah, hell no. You know, when I'm unhypnotized, I don't want to
Yeah.
remember this. So he
Right.
kind of gets stalled from having that experience where he loses his innocence. And I am
Yeah.
kind of now like, I see you, Stephen King, like, let's see what happens. Let's see what you do with this young man, especially like in such a harsh environment with such a harsh leader. And I'm excited to like, you know, see if I saw something or if I'm reading too much into it.
No, I think that is interesting that you had that thought, because yeah, I think you'll see.
I think it happens. I read it once, but that was so long ago that I don't remember at all what
I
happens
don't want to say anything.
afterwards. My goal is to finish by the time we do next episode so that like
Okay.
we can like talk about all of it, because I know you guys are probably hearing things and like, oh.
Yeah. No, I think that's I did not see that or just have that thought or think about that. That's really interesting. That's kind of cool that you picked up on that.
I agree. I agree.
One other thing that I thought was really interesting, and I guess like I'm really focused on that whole flashback scene because that's like basically what I've read since last time.
Yeah.
But in that conspiratorial conversation that Hax has that gets overworld, he describes, so they're poisoning children, if I understand correctly, in a different town that were going to
Yeah.
become gunslingers because it's better for them to die as children poisoned by them than to grow up by the gun. And they say the good man, who's Randall Flagg, who's the dark man, is building a world instead of living by the gun. And that's like the world that they're trying to promote. And I love that,
Yeah.
like, baked into all of this is still that, like, we don't know what the goals of the good and bad characters are, and neither do the other characters in this world. Like, but I like that the Man in Black has portrayed his civil war that he's trying to brew, because that's what it looks like. He's trying to
Mhm.
overthrow the rule of the gunslingers over the people and introduce a world of creation as opposed to a world of like of cold hard gun law.
Mhm.
And he's using revolution as his cloak over like what he's doing. Because you know, of course we have the feeling, or I have the feeling that like, yeah, he's using that as like, you know, the carrot, and the stick is whatever his end goals are. We don't know what they are, but the carrot is like, yeah, they're too harsh. Like, people don't need that much pressure on them. They can like live and create in beauty, and like we can have some type of utopia.
Right.
And I really like that because that sounds good. That it's great on
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
Kind of makes
It
me think about
almost
communism.
a little, yeah, and it also almost makes you sort of think, is the Man in Black bad, or are we just reading from Roland's perspective and this
Yeah.
is what he was taught and all he knows, so he thinks he thinks that what he is doing is the right and the good thing. Like no villain is a villain for the sake of being a villain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
In their mind, their path
Yeah.
is the right and good thing. So they're not like they're not sitting there thinking I want to be a villain. I'm just like I'm gonna be the bad one. In their mind, they are the good one, right? So
And
I'm kind of thinking that about Roland almost a little bit. Is he the good one? We only think that we only know, or at least think that the Man in Black is truly the bad one because we read The Stand
True.
before it.
True.
And in
and
that
that's
he's
brought up
very
as like
clearly,
a
it's almost very
question
black and
for the
white.
gunslingers too.
Yeah.
Is like his father says, like, you know, you're not sharp, you're not going to be worried about morality because you're not a big thinker, but that can be good for you. Like let big
Yeah.
thinkers worry about morals and you just be a gunslinger. And it's like, oh shit, so they're not moral? Like
Right.
like morality's outside of what they do. And I thought that
Right.
was really interesting because that's another strike where like we don't know who's the good and the bad guys. Like we don't have a lot of evidence. Like, can they be good guys if what they're doing isn't rooted in morality or compassion or doing
Right.
good?
Right. Exactly.
Hmm.
And for thousands, hundreds, maybe thousands of years, they've been taught and told we have to find the tower and we have to, like, the Man in Black is bad or whatever. But is that true? They've been told and raised that to believe that and swear to it, but I don't know.
Mm.
Jeremy.
You
What? What's
Switch closer to me, Jeremy.
Oh wait, it just got like
so dark and
darker.
intimate.
I know. I was like, wait, I feel like I'm looking through the like
Oh.
night goggles.
So you know what happened? Like the only I'm like Splinter Cell. Like
Wow.
so
Oh
I
my gosh.
switched. I was like looking something up, and when I looked something up, I went to a website that's in like dark mode, and now it became dark mode for like everything. So I apologize. Here, let me
No, it's okay. I mean,
switch over.
we can still see you. It's just really funny because it was like, oh,
Is that
mood
I
lighting.
need a light. I
like my Jeremy with
weird.
his values.
Here, let me get closer. Is this better?
It's
Hey,
almost
buddy.
a little bit oh shoot, what's that 90? Is it the 90s movie? Blair Witch Project? A little bit like,
Also, I have my black shirt on now, so I'm like
oh
really
yeah,
blending in.
that too.
Did y'all see that movie Chronicle? That was like the kids that get like telekinesis. And it was kind of like a handheld camera like movie, kind of like Blair Witch, but like they can control it with telekinesis too. It's
I
worth a
don't
watch.
think I've ever seen that. Yeah. I don't remember hearing about it. Chronicle? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Chronicle. I think it's singular.
Chronicle.
Oh. Chronicles of Narnia.
I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, a 2012 film. Oh, it's got Dane DeHaan and Michael B. Jordan. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Kelly. Oh, I don't think I've ever heard of this.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's just a bunch of kids that get telekinesis, and then the story happens.
Oh, it is. Okay, yeah. I can see how it looks like it makes it look like they're filming, except that it's really good quality.
Really good quality.
Like professional quality, unlike Blair Witch Project, which makes it seem like it's actually students filming.
I feel like it's getting
Cloverfield. What's that?
Oh, Cloverfield is good. Sorry.
I'm sinking into darkness.
Jeremy, now.
I think the Man in Black has taken hold of you.
I'm the Man in Black now.
You are literally in black.
I was gonna point this out to you guys because you might not realize it, but you'll remember the Man in Black puts a big emphasis on the number 19.
Yeah. Okay. So I was wondering if that would be explained in this book or just I'm assuming later in the series. I thought that was interesting too because not when this book is published, but when Stephen King first writes this or first has this
Yeah.
idea, he's 19, by the way.
Yes,
So I'm
exactly.
thinking,
Exactly.
Interesting.
I was
did you
thinking
choose
the
this
exact
number?
same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So he starts it when he's 19, and then
Right.
he places all this importance on the number 19. And
Right.
it really stands out because it's such a weird number, right?
It
Like, you know,
is.
Yeah, it's not like
It's
historically or like
right.
right.
It's not like
logically
13 or
Right.
20,
13 would have made
24
sense.
or
24 would have made sense. Like
12. Yeah.
12, yeah.
It's
All of
not a
those would
historically
have
significant.
had
Yeah.
exactly. So, I don't know if you guys know this, but basically the number 19 not only appears in this first book, but
Okay.
like a ton of his books. So it spans across
Oh.
like basically all of his books,
Oh,
Was it
and
in
it
the
becomes
stand?
like
I don't remember it in the
I
stand.
don't remember it in the stand at all.
I don't think it's in The Stand, but it's in a ton of his books
Okay.
where he puts it in as like a little Easter egg.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, of course.
And I wonder if it's in it. And
I
I
know, I was
like
just thinking,
never
is it in
thought to look
it?
for it.
Right. And it's been like probably a year or so since I last read it, so I can't remember that at all.
do you guys want to see a list of all
Sure.
references to 19?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
Okay.
gonna spoil anything.
And I found a reference to a red eye as well. Page 109. He describes Martin's smile as a eye opening in
Yes.
the dark, disclosing blood.
Yep. You are correct. I do
Oh,
remember that.
okay. Nice.
Very excited.
Nice.
I was like, ooh, I get to tell my
Oh.
friends.
Nice. That's good. I missed that.
Oh, they're just okay.
So yeah, if you click that link, you can see every reference to the number 19. So it's obvious that he's doing it on purpose.
Oh, they even have names containing 19 letters.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's interesting too that the very
Ah.
beginning of my copy, and I don't know if this is in all of them, but it's like the foreword before the foreword,
Oh,
Mhm.
where
yeah.
he talks about like, you're a young man, go be a young man. You're only a young man once. A young man's gonna make mistakes, that it's okay. Like, go before the
Right.
dark man gets you.
Right.
So the idea that like him being 19, that being like a death number or a curse number, I
Mhm.
wonder if that's kind of why that forward's there, because I remember reading it and I'm like, this is really out of place for like a
I mean,
Stephen King forward.
kind of. Yeah, it's even that is even called On Being 19 and a few other things. Like that's what it's the
Oh my gosh,
introduction.
it is.
Yeah, it's the
Huh.
introduction. So it's right before the forward, but he literally calls it On Being 19 and a few other
Mhm.
things. And I do
Oh,
remember
interesting.
thinking it is a bit out of place, but it kind of makes sense because he's trying to say that, hey, I wrote this. This was like basically the first idea that I had, or the first thing that I wrote. But I was 19 and
Mhm.
like full of life, and like nothing could stop me and nothing could kill me. You know what I mean? When you're a teenager,
Yeah.
you think like anything is possible, and you're invincible.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's like his first book, sort of, or his first story, sort of. Um, so I sort of see why he's trying to say all this at the beginning, but at the same time, it didn't quite get it. But then when I got past the forward, I think it even has. I want to say, yeah, okay. So after the forward, start to get into the story, and it has, oh, can't see that, 19,
Oh, yeah.
and then resumption.
Huh.
And so I read all that and I
Oh.
was like, 19. There's just this page that says
Yeah.
19 on it, and I thought, okay, that's
It's so
interesting.
funny that that's like the first things, and like I just didn't
Yeah.
hold on to it as I continued reading.
Yeah.
So I remember the 19 on like by itself on the page, and I thought, huh, that's interesting. And then you don't hear about 19 until until I think he meets Allie, right? Because that's when she tells him about how
Yeah.
the man in black like left that
Right.
note for her. And if
Yeah.
what is it, if she tells the number, if she says 19 to the guy that was like a zombie, she would go
Mhm.
crazy or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I got to that part and I was like, okay, so this means something more. Clearly that number means something. But it's not really explained after that. But I've assumed it would probably be explained just later. So yeah.
Yeah, if you look at that link, he basically sneaks the number 19 into like a ton of his
Yeah.
books.
Yeah, he
It's
definitely
like a
does.
little,
It's really interesting.
like a kind of like an Easter egg, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
In The Shining, the most dangerous room in the Overlook Hotel is 217. 2 plus 17 is 19.
Dun dun dun.
Well, there's one, it's like
God.
names containing 19 letters. Dana Roberta Jurgens in The Stand, and Althea Pierce Dunning and 11/22/63. By the way, I like how they have it 22/11/63 because it's the British version. I guess.
Interesting.
I'm going down the 19 hole, guys.
The 19, the
What?
19 hole.
But there are only
There's so
18 of
many.
there's only
Oh,
18 holes though.
Satan's golf course.
Satan's golf course.
Lloyd Henreid's prison uniform number 25741 equals 9.
Huh.
A lot of it's like this number plus this number plus this number equals 19.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I like
feels-
conspiracy theory
I know.
things.
I was gonna
This
say,
is
so it feels
tickling
very
that.
conspiracy, and like
It does. It does. It's very like, oh, and
Guys.
then if you take this person's birth date and then add it to the year that Randall Flagg was born, then you get 19, like.
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Crazy.
Like even this in the 2003 film Dreamcatcher, Duddit's address is 19 Maple Lane. I'm like, I don't know if that counts.
Yeah.
Qualifies
I
as
think
this.
That's like a ooh.
I feel like some of them are like a reach. I feel like some of
Yeah.
them are definitely like a reach where he
Yeah.
didn't mean to put it in there. But
Right.
then you'll notice that a lot of the books where it really appears prominently are all like books that he wrote later on. The Outsider, Sleeping Beauties, End of Watch, Finders Keepers. The ones where it really is prominent are in those later books, almost like he thought of it later on. He's like, "Oh, this will be cool if I just kind of sneak this in there."
Right. No, I agree. Some definitely feel like a reach, and others it's like, oh, okay, I can
Yeah.
see. Mm-hmm.
19th president of the United States being Rutherford B. Hayes.
I don't know why they listed all that at the bottom. I'm like, they're like 19 is the atomic number of potassium. I'm like, that doesn't have anything to do
With
can't
Stephen
wait to
King.
send you guys
Right.
messages like
Like,
throughout my daily life where I see 19.
Stephen
like,
King
guys.
didn't create the atomic. Like, I don't. It didn't. It's just.
Right.
Wait, where does it say that? At
Oh,
the
like
bottom?
down near like the bottom, it'll say other occurrences and it'll be
Oh,
like
like in
19
games.
feet.
In That
Yeah.
doesn't. That has nothing.
Right. Yeah.
19 feet is the
It's
height of
like-
the statues of both Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Jefferson. No, that doesn't. What does
That
that have anything to
proves it.
do with anything? That
It
proves
gets-
Stephen King is
Right. Exactly. It gets more confusing like the further down you go.
I noticed.
This is super. They're just finding 19, and they're saying like the 19th president of the United States is Rutherford B. Hayes. Like,
Right,
okay,
yeah.
you can say that about anything. The 19th
Exactly.
governor of Atlanta is I don't know,
Exactly. Yeah.
or not
it's-
Atlanta,
it's
but
just
you know what I mean.
like
Georgia. I just-
nonsensical. Yeah.
Yeah, and of
It's
course,
like-
a standard
Okay.
game of Go is played on a 19 by 19 board as well.
Right. Yeah.
what is Go? I don't even know what
I
that
don't-
is.
Oh, it's a really fun board game. You have you guys ever played Go?
No, I've never even heard of it.
Oh,
It has a link to it though. Oh yeah, I've never seen
Oh.
that before.
Really?
I don't think so.
I'll
I've definitely never played it.
I'll bring my laptop tomorrow and I'll show you guys how to play Go. Like you might find it interesting. Like it's pretty fun.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's Japanese, I want to say.
Okay.
you really
Yeah.
think so? Like the song, think I'm turning. It's fine.
And then it proceeds to list
It's bad.
every player in every professional sport that has
Yeah.
the number 19. I
Yeah.
don't even, it's probably not even every professional sport either, because, but still, it's just so strange.
And they start like listing like Steely Dan songs that like
Yeah.
talk about the number 19.
There's
I'm like,
there's
okay.
Adele's album 19.
That's what I was
Right,
just
yeah.
looking at.
Yeah, Adele is in
It-
cahoots with Stephen King.
It's
Oh yeah, I believe
it definitely feels like Stephen King definitely put it in there as a little Easter egg, but then the
Yeah.
person that compiled this, I think they may legit be crazy.
They are just looking for, now they are obsessed with the
Right.
number 19, and
it have
they are
the
looking for
original poster?
19.
We
Yeah,
should
they're
check
looking
in
for
on them and
19
see how they
everywhere
are.
in their life.
Like
That's
it,
hilarious.
it's almost like a Stephen King story in itself. It's like this person driven insane by the number 19 and they look for it everywhere now.
I'd read
Yeah.
that book.
19 is everywhere. It's the most prominent number.
19 killed my mom.
Oh man. Did you guys want to wrap up this episode soon? I think it's right around an hour. Or did you guys want to say anything else?
No, I think I'm good either way. I am hungry though, I will say that.
Okay.
I have not eaten
Understandable.
dinner yet.
Okay.
But I feel
I
like
have to go scour my
discussed-
apartment for 19s. So
yeah,
Have to be
that's
real
true. I
busy.
need to go. If I look on my keyboard, the number 19 is on there twice
God.
Whoa.
because I have the row above the keys, and then I've got the number pad.
Dun dun dun.
Get rid of it. Get rid of that keyboard.
Yeah. I think
Boo.
it's, there is no F19, so I can't say that.
All right, I will stop the recording, but I'm not going to end the meeting because
Okay.
I wanted to say something off camera real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, our
Yes.
listeners you'll fucking never learn what we're about to talk about.
We're gonna
Never.
talk about the number 19.
Super private.
Okay. Bye, subscribers. As I
Bye,
sink into
Bye.
darkness. Okay.